just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again.
Hello, my name's Lonnie Jones, and this is my life story. Stuff that I remember during my life, and we're going to go all the way up till I either die or I get it told or whatever up to date. But it's going to take a long time to tell everything that I can remember. But I'm going to do my best. And went through episode 12. Now we're on episode 13, and we were making rat pellets and mice pellets at a company called Ringo Manufacturing Company when I left off the last time. Now in this episode here, it's going to be like meeting my first wife, which was Geraldine Ferris was her name, and which is Ronnie's mama, and she's still doing very well. And but at any rate, I'll tell you how I met her. And I was working at Ringo Manufacturing Company, and I was playing baseball, and we had two leagues. We had an industrial league and a city league, and I played for both leagues. One wasn't no better than the other one necessary in no way, except in one was sponsored. The city league was sponsored by restaurants and barbecue places, and where industrial league, it was sponsored by big companies like steel companies and lumber companies, stuff like that. About the only difference between city league and the I guess industrial league. That's about the only difference there was. And I played for both of them. And I remember playing for Mitchell Steel, and they were right off the interstate there, which at the time I'm not sure if the interstate was even there at the time, but this was this is around 1960, 61. Now we're getting into 1961 here, and that's when I met my wife. Geraldine Ferris was her name, and how I went about meeting her is quite funny, sort of, in a way, of how I did that. And again, this is my story, and some of the things that God has done for me in my lifetime. Now, in every episode, I don't necessarily bring up what God has done for me in every episode, but somewhere in there, He has done something for me. But it probably wasn't significant enough that I would notice it necessarily at the time or remember it at the time. But He's always been there. And of course, at the time, I didn't know that as much about God as I think I do today. But anyway, how I met my first wife, Geraldine Ferris was her name again. How I met her was, as I played baseball, as I was saying, and my sister lived in the projects, and I worked at Ringo Manufacturing Company, and we'd play baseball one night a week, and then on Sunday afternoons. And some of the guys would all congregate back in the projects at one of the guys' houses that their probably mom and dads were probably gone, and we'd sit around and talk and carry on. And I was one of the older ones of the bunch. I was a year to 2 years older than the most of them. And one of the things, and how I met my first wife was, one of the things was, the guys, they would get on the telephone and they'd call people up at random. Had no idea who they was calling. They just look in the book, dial a number, and they would, whoever answered the phone, they'd say, who's there, and so forth. Try to play jokes on everybody, and they were playing jokes on people, calling them up and everything. And there was one guy called, and I paid attention to it because one of the questions he asked, he says, do you have a bigger sister? Obviously, he had found out that that the girl he was talking to was a young girl, and she did have a sister. She was like, I believe, about 14 years old, or maybe 13 years old, and she had an older sister at the time, was graduating from high school, Madison High School, and she was like 18 years old, and she was about to graduate high school in Madison. And so I heard him ask her, did she have a bigger sister? And she said, yes, she's 18, so forth and so on. So they went on for a minute or two, and and the girl wouldn't talk to him or anything. The older one wouldn't talk to him. It was in the middle of summertime, so which turned out to be my wife. She wouldn't talk to nobody, but it so happened I took down. They wrote the number down on something, and I took that number down. And after everybody got through playing their games on the telephone, calling people and everything, I took that number, and the next day I called that number. And again, the youngest girl answered the phone, and I said about the same thing the other guy did. I said, "You have an older sister?" She yelled. Her name is Jerry, and she's 18 years old. And I said, "Well, I'm who I am." I told her who I was and everything. I told her I would like to talk to her, So it didn't happen right away. I had to call about 3 different days before Jerry would answer the phone. So Jerry finally came to the phone, and we got to talking. And I was as of age enough that I wasn't a smart aleck, and I always tried to treat people nice and everything because that's how I was taught. So I got to talking to Jerry. So I talked to her, I guess, for 10 days, two full weeks, I guess, like that. She wouldn't let me come see her or nothing. So finally she did tell me where she lived, and she liked country music. And of course I like country music. So she finally told me where she lived and everything. So I said, well, I'll leave you a couple of records in your mailbox and see if you like them. So she agreed to that. So I went and left the records in the mailbox and didn't see nobody and went on. So about 2 weeks after that, which it's done gone into nearly a month now. And I believe this is like August, around August in the summertime, because baseball was winding down, I know. And so I went on, and so I'd call her after that and say, "Hey, did you get the records and everything?" She said, "Yes, I got them, and I really do like them and everything." I said, "Well," I said, "when you gonna let me come see?" She says, "Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that." But she said, "I'll tell you where we're going to be tonight if you would like to see what I look like." She said, "We're going to be at Kroger's over in the Madison Square shopping mall." Well, at the time, this was early 60s, so at that time, Madison Square Mall was relatively new, and it was the biggest thing happening. And a lot of the people that's listening to me right now knows where the first Shoney's ever was, and the first Shoney's that there ever was in the Madison Square Mall up here on Gallatin Road at the end of I'm not too sure. It was right across from a couple of churches. I don't remember what the names of the churches was, but anyway, everybody knows about where the Shoney's was at that time. That was in the early 60s. She said, and across from Shoney's there is a Kroger store, and we're going to be going to the grocery store there, and we're going to be driving a blue 57 Plymouth car with a white top. So if you want to see what I look like, well, you can sit there and watch us, and we'll be getting out of the car and going in the grocery store. So I thought that was pretty wild. But anyway, I went along with the program. So I go in over Shoney's, and I pull in, and she also let me know about what time they were going to be there. So I pulled in over Shoney's. That was back when you could ride around and around and around Shoney's. Everybody rode around and around Shoney's. So anyway, back to the street where it comes out, and Neely's Bend comes right out up into Gallatin Road, and at about 11 o'clock is where Shoney's set, for those of you who don't remember or whatever, but that's where Shoney's was, and they just recently tore it down. Of course, we're talking here right now, this is 2020, so they've just tore it down. But anyway, that's where Kroger's was at the time, right across from Shoney's. So I pulled in Shoney's, and I sat there and waited, and sure enough, here she come in. Her daddy came in and parked up beside the curb there, and they all got out and went in. He went and parked the car. Well, I got a chance to see what Jerry looked like, and she was a very pretty girl. She was, like I said, 18 years old, and she's a very pretty girl. Well, she had Mary Ann, which was her sister, was with her, and Mitchell was with her, which was her brother next to her. They were all, whole family was there. So I got a good look at what she looked like and everything. So and I guess I got something to eat at Shoney's, whatever, and drove around Shoney's like we always did. And then the next day I called her up and told her that I did see her and everything. And so somehow or another, I think I come up with a picture of me or something somehow. I'm not too sure exactly how that came about. But to show her what I look like, I think I put my picture in the mailbox with a record, with a country music record, the best I remember. So anyway, she got the picture and found out what I look like and everything. So now this is going on. This is already, we done eased up into almost September, right at September, when she finally agreed to let me come over to her house. We couldn't go nowhere after we got there, but I could go into the house and we meet her mom and dad, and of course her brother and her sister. So she did agree to do that. And I had this old 55 Ford, and I had bought it from a boy, and he'd sideswiped the telephone pole with, and I took over his payments type thing, and that's how come the car was beautiful on the other side, and it wasn't almost 6 years old. Good, nice car, except on one side, couldn't even get in doors open, where he'd sideswiped the telephone pole. So he had bought it at one of these places where you make your payments at the where you buy the thing. So I took his payments over because he didn't want it no more since he'd wrecked it. So I took your payments over on it, and that's what I was driving at the time. And so anyway, I went in, and I never will forget, I didn't have a suit. I don't even know where I got the suit, but I had to dress, in my mind, I had to dress up. I had to look good, you see. Well, I don't know where I got the suit. I have no clue. I know it didn't fit me. I know the pants were too big, the sleeves were too long, and it was wool, and I was burning up. And again, this is late August, 1st of September. So make a short, we got to get into long story short stuff. But anyway, I know I had a wool suit like to burn me up. So I went in, met her mom and dad, and there wasn't a whole lot said, nothing. We sat around and watched television, and that was about the name of the game at that point. So, but we did that 3 or 4 times, and then they allowed us to go out on a date. So we started going out and dating. Well, the first place I carried her to was Rigo Manufacturing Company parking lot, and we parked down there where I worked at and smooched. You know what smooching is, I'm sure most of you watching. If you don't know, you will when I get done. We're at the parking lot and at the Rigo Manufacturing Company where I worked. I had to show her where I worked, and that was down on Benton Avenue, right off 8th Avenue. And of course, at that time, I was real proud of my job. I was doing okay, making as good of money as about anybody else was making. Nobody was making a lot of money back then. But how many of you, and I'm sure there's a bunch of you, have had the old pocketbook trick pulled on you, that somebody ties a string to a pocketbook and puts it out in the middle of the road, and you stop and get it, and then they jerk it away from you? Well, one night we were dating, and we were down in the parking lot, and we left Rigo Manufacturing Company, was coming out and going home and so forth, and we come out and hit the road, and just as soon as I turned left into the road on Benton Avenue, there lay this purse in the middle of the road. Well, of course, naturally, I get out to go get the purse. Well, I get almost to the purse, get ready to pick it up, and these kids jerk it back through the bushes. And of course, the joke was on us, of course. But that most of everybody has had that trick pulled one time or other. Well, it was pulled on me on Benton Avenue over in South Nashville, and so we went on home, and then a couple of days later, they met my sister, and I don't think she ever did. At that time, my sister had just moved to Antioch, Tennessee. So I was no longer actually living in the projects at that time. So I was living with my sister out in Antioch. And this was the year that they turned Metro into Metro. At one time, it wasn't Metro. It was the sheriff took care of the whole county. But it was the year, I believe 61 was the year that they turned Nashville into Metro. But anyway, we continued to date at the time, and going out on dates and everything. And so we began to get serious about getting married and everything. So I think from the time I met Rita, from first time I guess I met Jerry until we got married, I believe it was right at 6 months. It was right at 6 months because we continued on dating, and we got married 12, I believe, if I'm not wrong, I'm not sure about this for sure, but I'm pretty sure it was the 12th of January of 61 when we got, or 62, yeah. It was 12th of January of 1962, because I would have turned 20 on the 19th of January. We were going to get married on my birthday, and we changed our mind. We just couldn't wait. We couldn't have 5 more days, so we just went ahead and got married on the 12th. And when we got married, I had basically nothing but a job. I did have a job, and just prior to, after my sister moved to Antioch, me and some guys from Dixon, Tennessee, got us an apartment out in West Nashville, and we was actually living in an apartment out there just prior to me and Jerry getting married. And Jerry is my son's mother, of course, Ronnie's mama. And so anyway, we went ahead and we decided we were going to get married. So we coached it along there until January 12th. We got married. Mr. Ferris, her mom and dad, helped us get us an apartment over on Riverside Drive. Porter Road and Riverside Drive is where our first house was, where we lived. It's a rock house, and it's still there today. And right on the corner of where the rock house is at, there's a building still sitting there, and it was called at the time Woods Gulf Service Station. He served, he pumped gas, he did oil and lube jobs, and changed tires, flats, and all that stuff. So I had quit Rigo Manufacturing Company and went to work there. And I don't even know why I quit Rigo Manufacturing Company. I think I ended up was going to make more money working over at the service station. Plus, I just walked out of the house and walked across the street to work every morning. But let's back up just a little bit and let me tell you about seeing the preacher and getting married, actually saying I do and everything. Hour north over to Madison Church of Christ married me and Jerry, and it wasn't no big fancy ceremony. We got married in the little rock part. It used to stick out front there. I think they rebuilt around it and everything, but it was a little chapel, and we got married in that rock chapel there in Madison Church of Christ. An hour north married us, and when we got ready to pay him, I got married for $5. That's what I had, $5. I gave him $5, and the wedding dress, we had the wedding dress and everything, but there was no big fancy wedding. A whole lot of people showed up and all that kind of thing. But I give Hour North $5. That's all I had. I think that's all I had was $5, and I gave him $5. So anyway, we went ahead and moved into our little rock house over there, and I went to work for Woods Gulf Service Station. Well, during that year, first year, I worked for the Woods Gulf Service Station, and it was, I don't remember, I believe it was 62, but that winter was a hard winter, and we had like 8 or 10 inches of snow and ice and all that stuff, and I was actually toting batteries to start cars. It was down around zero, and I was toting batteries around those streets by hand, in my hand, to start people. From as far away as a block away, I would tote a battery. Well, I had came from the country, and I had been healthy, and I had never been sick and all that stuff, so I was pretty stout when I was 20 years old, so toting one of those batteries wasn't that hard of a deal. But I toted batteries as much as a block away just to get people started for them to go to work in that snow and ice. And it was quite a chore. And then I got to where I could change tires and all that stuff, because he finally got him a tire changer. That's when the tire changers first come out. That was a big deal, because it was a big job changing tires. And that was back when you got full service. When you pull up, you check you wash the windshield, and you check the tires, and you check the water in the radiator. You did all those things back in the 60s. That's how it was, full service. And you didn't get any more for full service than you did for no service other than pumping the gas. But at any rate, that was one of the hard parts that I had going on there that winter, is that toting those batteries and doing all that work in snow and ice. And it was a pretty rough wintertime coming along. So when wintertime was over, my father-in-law, he was on, at the time he worked for Stewart and Bond Manufacturing Company, which was a tool and die company down off of Trinity Lane. He worked for them at the time. Well, I remember, never will forget, he got me out in the yard and we sat there and he said, "How mechanically inclined are you?" And I knew about as much about what he meant as a man in the moon. I had no clue to what he meant. You know, how mechanically inclined are you? And of course I found out later that means how fast can I learn? What do I know? What can I do? What can I do? And so forth and so on. So I didn't know what to answer him. But anyways, Will said, I got a chance of getting you a job at a tool and die shop if you're inclined to do so and want to do so, and it'll pay you a lot more than you're making now. I said, well, and he said, you'll have a trade on top of that, because he's looking after his daughter. He didn't want her back now, necessarily, if you know what I mean. So anyway, he got me a job at a company called Bennett Tool and Die. And I went to work. Of course, my first job with Bennett Tool and Die was sweeping floors. That's the first thing you do when you go into a tool and die shop. You get a job of sweeping floors. And so I swept floors and drove the truck. I would go pick up and deliver. They had a big 2-ton truck. They hauled their dies around to places and explain to you about trying dies out. Some people out there might not know what a die is, but I'll tell you in my next segment, which will be 14, about the tool and die in it. But anyway, I went to work for Bennett Tool and Die, and we went away Clifton Avenue. They were on Clifton Avenue out in northwest Nashville. That was off of Charlotte. Clifton run off of Charlotte. And Bennett Tool and Die had a tool and die shop out there, and that's where I went to work at. Well, I had a car, and a boy that worked with me over there lived on this side of town, which was in Madison, and we'd take turns driving. He'd drive one week and I'd drive the next. And we would drive out on Clifton Avenue, and we would work in the tool and die, and I'm sweeping floors and I'm driving the truck. And I'm going to end this episode now because I got a lot to tell you about driving the truck. Driving a truck, it's not just driving a truck, believe me, it's how you tie things down and so forth. So I know that 13 is not going to be very exciting, but 13 is never too exciting. So we're going to leave it off here where I'm driving trucks, sweeping floors at Bennett Tool and Die. Got me a new job, got away from the service station, carrying batteries and things, and I moved up in the world to, I got me a trade now, a tool and die machine shop tool and die trade. So I'll get back with you on 14, and right now though, we're going to play you a couple of real pretty tunes. I always play a couple of pretty tunes for you on all of my episodes, so I'm going to get my guitar out and I'll get Rita to help me out here, and we're going to do you a couple of numbers, okay? And we'll do these numbers, then I'll see you on number 14, episode number 14. Because God's still there. He's looking after me. Just got me a good job. Remember that. So I'll see you on 14. It's called in B flat, right? Anyway, called Beautiful Life. Each day I'll do a golden deed,
a golden deed.
by helping those,
By helping those
who are in need,
who are in need.
my life on earth,
My life on earth
is but a span,
is but a span.
and so I'll do,
And so I'll do the best I can.
Life's evening sun,
Life's evening sun
is sinking low,
but it's sinking low.
A few more days,
A few more days,
and I must go to meet the need that I have done. Where there will be no setting sun. Woo! Pick your son. To be a child of God each day, my light must shine along the way. I'll sing and pray while the ages roll, and try to help some troubled soul.
Life's evening
Life's evening sun
is sinking low.
is sinking low.
A few more days,
A few more days,
let's go.
and I must go to meet the deed that I have done. Where there will be no setting sun. While going down life's weary road, I'll try to live some travel low. Try to turn the night today, make flowers bloom along the way.
Life's evening
Life's evening sun
is sinking low.
is sinking low.
A few more days,
A few more days,
let's go.
and I must go to meet the deed that I have done. Where there will be no setting sun. The only lie that I'll endure is one that's kind, good and pure.
That's good and pure.
And so for God,
And so for God,
I'll take my stand.
I'll take my stand.
Each day I'll
lend a helping hand. Life's evening sun
Life's evening sun
is sinking low.
is sinking low.
A few more days,
A few more days,
let's go.
and I must go to meet the deed that I have done. Where there will be no setting sun, no setting sun. I'll be just a minute here. All right, now what's the name of the song?
Lord, did somebody
Do
touch
it.
me?
Glory, glory. Let's do it.
Glory, glory, somebody touch me. Lord, glory, glory, somebody touch me. Lord, glory, glory, somebody touch me. Must in the hand of the Lord. While I was singing, somebody touched me. While I was singing,
Glory, glory. Somebody touch me. Good job.
Mighty fine, mighty fine.
All right, we're going to tell y'all all about our church, Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. That's where we go to church every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, 11 to 12. And we'd like to let you know that on all my episodes, we're going to sure bring the church up because God's there. He's here with us today, and he's done a lot for me. You don't know where God's at. He's everywhere. He's always there. If you need him bad enough, he's going to be there for you. So don't forget the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, every Sunday morning from 11 to 12 o'clock. See you there. Thank you.
Jesus died on the cross from a dogwood tree. He gave his life and soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and